All right. Welcome to the double lesson. Probably it's hard to say if I have a favorite lesson in this series, but this one probably is. And as we deal with the subject of praise and worship theology. And I know in our previous previous last week, we dealt with the history, the origins of praise and worship, how it came out of the charismatic movement and the contemporary movement. You had those two sides that converged there in the 90s and created this hybrid monster that has proven to be so influential, so powerful, so deceptive in its work. And I really hesitate to say this, but was recently at a youth event, took our teens to, and just something about a couple of the songs kind of got me like, I wonder where that came from. And I'm sitting there and I get my phone out and I'm googling lyrics, and just picking up something and looking, and um, almost every song, including a couple of congregationals, were from the contemporary world. Some of them very, very modern. Sometimes something that's 20 years old kind of slips in just because it's kind of just out there, and it kind of loses some of that association that it originally had. But this is a real problem that is really creeping into our fundamental churches. And so I think it's very important. And like I said, we've seen the origin, and we'll deal later with how to kind of judge music for use in the church from a kind of a practical standpoint. But in this case, and I know we've talked about a lot of these. If you have finished reading my book, Rediscovering Worship, in the class, then some of this is going to repeat. There's a number of things that I have on this. Uh, it's a very important topic, and I think once you understand what is being said in the songs, and not just what's being said, but the way they're designed. There's a reason for what they're doing, and I think you will hopefully understand that better. And my goal in this lecture is to show you just how foolish, unscriptural so much of this foundational theology and philosophy is when it comes to praise and worship music. Oh, already off to a great start here. So let's jump right on in here. And I've got actually a number of things here. Tell you what, let me jump back on the camera real quick. Got a number of things here we'll talk about just by way of introduction. I've got a bunch of a whole stack of books. I got my notes over here. Um, like I said, you can see my bookshelves and stuff behind me. It's actually over there. I've got almost two of these, shelves like that, full of books on music and worship that I have collected. That doesn't include hymnals or anything really. Although I do have a couple of hymnals up there right now, but I mean, I'm not talking about music books. I actually have a whole bunch of those down here. But I'm talking about books on worship, on music, on theology. My hair's kind of sticking up. That's kind of embarrassing. I kind of got a cowlick there as I've gotten older. I'm losing hair, and that just wants to stick up. Anyway, just want to show you a few examples because as we jump into this, um, my main two books that I've kind of selected because A, they're popular, B, they are they're recommended even in our circles, and three, I think that at least in one case, they're great examples of where the thought is today with a lot of this. The first one, I think I'll do this one first. This is Worship Matters by Bob Coughlin. I've told the story before, I know, in the class that when I first was kind of looking at teaching this class, I put out there and asked for different books on a Facebook group I was part of at the time. And this book was one of the ones, and the next book I'll show you too, were two of the ones that really throws that automatic whiten scale off when I do that on that webcam. That's interesting. But this was one of the main books, and he is one of the most popular thinkers on this. And so we're going to go through and highlight some things about him because, like I say, he's one of the most influential thinkers on this kind of in the broader realm. So we'll be talking about Mr. Coughlin. This one right here, How to Worship a King by Zach Neese. He was out of Gateway. He's not there now. Last time I checked, he's like helping another church plant in the DFW area. But this is kind of their official worship book, and it's not as popular, not as much out there like a bestseller on this, but it is a great example. It includes just about every single trope I'm going to discuss on praise and worship theology and philosophy. It's in this book. That also was recommended to me, and it is garbage. Worst book I've ever read. That's my tagline for that. Copyrighted, Matthew Gage. Um, just to show you, I mean, how widespread. And by the way, there are hundreds of books written on praise and worship theology, supporting it especially. You start there in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, on in today. There's still books being brought out. Here's one, Jack Hayford, Worship Worship His Majesty. He wrote the song Majesty. If you're familiar with that chorus, he is an out and out charismatic heir of Amy Simple McPherson, if you remember with that name. Um, I could dissect this one. We're not going to. My notes were based on some other ones. And like I said, I think the other ones articulate a little bit better, but that's one. Holy Roar. This one's pretty popular, and we'll get into this one and we'll bash it too. Chris Tomlin, popular praise and worship artist. And then his pastor, Darren Whitehead, wrote this. It's a Hebrew word study. It's called the little subtitle, 7 Words That Will Change the Way You Worship. No, they don't. Once we get into those, a couple other more. Let me give a little bit more. You get books like this, Warren Wiersbe. I really like Warren Wiersbe 90% of the time, it seems like. And this book is pretty good, but he leaves the door open on some things that really disappoint me. Especially if I remember right towards the end back here, he really leaves the door open for some charismatic stuff. In fact, here we go. One of the second to last paragraph, in fact, the last full paragraph, right here. And I put little notes and things as I'm reading these so I can go back and find this. But it appears that during each age of church history, God enabled the church to recover some lost truth. And he says Luther recovered justification by faith in the priesthood of believers. Wesley recovered evangelism and holy living. Today, our charismatic friends have encouraged us to get acquainted with the Holy Spirit of God. I'm going to stop there, but I mean, that, like I say, even in a conservative author, this stuff is out there. Where they're leaving the door open for charismatic worship. This one is a very popular one now, Doxology and Theology by getting tongue tied. Matt Boswell kind of edited it. It's a bunch of different chapters, different people, and like I say, we could go through here. The whole thing is based on a praise and worship foundation theology, so it just. I'll say we could go in here and different things. I'm not going to. I ain't got time to do that. Another one, kind of a fairly conservative author, H.B. Charles Jr. And I see stuff of his shared sometimes on Facebook. He's got a book on preaching. He's got seems like pretty good philosophy of preaching. And this book, again, it's like 75-90% of it may be pretty good. But if you know what to look for, if you know some of the things that are, to look for, some of the theology points, it's in here. And I was just trying to flip through here and see some of the things. But like I say, he kind of leaves the door open on modern music, and like I say, that's another one that's fairly popular today. Better books. and I will reference this one later. John MacArthur's book on worship, The Ultimate Priority. I actually have a hardback of this one too. This one is pretty good. It's about 90% there. He also leaves the door open for contemporary worship, and I can tell you at his last big Shepherds Conference, I guess 2024, that he actually had Bob Coughlin, the first book I showed you, lead some worship, and there was some. It was really kind of controversial. Some of the people were very upset because the style was so different than what they typically use. And my favorite book that I have come across, other than my own, is that really I think nails the theology behind it. Is this one right here? It's not about the music. A Journey into Worship by Dan Lucarini. Uh, this one is the one I finally got, and I said, finally, somebody got it right. I've seen some that get close. I've seen some that'll get some of it right, but this one gets it right. I highly recommend this book. Um, I've got a couple other by him, but this one he nails it. So I highly recommend this one as far as um, just good information and really nailing a lot of things. So you stack those. I didn't grab my the books we had last time with the history books, history of contemporary praise and worship and praise and worship and contemporary worship, whatever that one. Lim Sui Hong and yeah, the other guy. Those books, those two books, and then Loving on Jesus. Those two books are fantastic. But anyway, that's just a sampling. Like I say, I don't even buy all the ones that I see anymore. I go to Half Price Books and I'll look, and there'll be books there. I don't even mess with them. And so many YouTube videos and articles on this. But also, that's just kind of a way of introduction. I'll show you a few things as we get in here. So let's get started because I want to show you some of the techniques and the foundations that they use that, like I said, a lot of times on the surface, they look good. And here's the scary thing to me. When we're dealing with theology, we're dealing with the Bible, you have to realize that some people will say, thus saith the Lord, but it's not really what God said. Uh, Stuff taken out of context, stuff redefined, these kind of things are very real. So you may pick up on these books and go, "Oh my goodness, look! Oh wow, that's in there. I didn't know that was in there." It may not be. You have to dig a little deeper than sometimes just the surface or some of these just surface claims. In fact, well, we'll get into that here pretty quick. A few things. All right, let's get started here. I've rambled on long enough because we've got about 120 slides to get through on this one. And also, I'm probably glad I'm not there because we would never get through this with everything, with chasing rabbits and answering questions and stuff. So, all right. So let me jump back over to the PowerPoint here and let's get started. All right. First thing we're going to look at is definitions. Definitions. And proponents of praise and worship theology have on the slide used vague or misleading definitions to common words. Um, a lot of times they redefine them too. And this is really strange to me how you can write a book on worship but never really even describe what worship is or define it. So I'll say define it. You can describe it, you can talk all about it, but you never actually say what is worship. So, first example here we're going to look at is from Mr. Coughlin's book, What is Worship? And 2008. It's been around a little while. He actually has a newer book out. I don't remember the name of it. I have it. It just doesn't really do much for me. And it's not as popular as this one. By the way, you will note on there, I mean, the number of people that back this. Mark Dever, that's, was it 12 Marks, whatever that group is. Albert Mohler, I mean, he's considered a conservative theologian from Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, Louisville. John Frame, he's got a theology book out. Matt Redman, he's a artist, right? D.A. Carson's considered very conservative. Randy Alcorn, he's got a book on heaven I've never read. Bruce Ware, I'm not. Stuart Townsend, that's a name. He's a songwriter. He helped write In Christ Alone, and he has very charismatic leanings. Wayne Grudem. And by the way, if you're not familiar with Wayne Grudem, that's pretty much um, the default theology book, systematic theology book that the Southern Baptists use, and he is charismatic. I'm just going to say it, and it's in there. Um, but he just is. He's a charismatic. He's open to sign gifts and all kinds of stuff. And we wonder why the Southern Baptists are drifting. Is because they're using some tainted books. Okay, all right. Let me jump back over here. Sorry, this is so exciting as I click through these. Okay, so Mr. Coughlin's book, Worship Matters. I read through it and I realized, wait a minute, I don't think he ever said what worship is. So I look back here in the index, and he's got a pretty good index. That's nice. And you see page 17, what it is. That's worship. What is worship? Okay, great. Let's look at what is worship. So we go to page 17 and maybe a little bit tiny on your screens, but the left side there, that's the full page. I have read this I don't know how many times, and the closest thing I can find in this page that even remotely sounds like a definition is this one line: worship is about what we love, what we live for. That's not a definition. That's not. If I were to ask you, how do I worship, and you say, well, it's about what you love, that says nothing. I mean, it's so broad, it's absolutely of no use. So he also had there in the index, he said what worship isn't, page 25. And he says here, worship isn't primarily about music, techniques, liturgies, songs, or methodologies. It's about our hearts. Oh, doesn't that sound so sweet? Um, and like I say, there's a nugget of truth in this, but and maybe this actually, I guess, kind of defines it a little bit more because he's saying music, techniques, liturgy, songs, methodologies are part of worship. It's just not primarily about them. But even the idea of the heart, you have to be very careful with that because you're getting into the idea of um, um, it's very selfish worship. We talked about that in the book. That it's, well, I'm offering this to God because I'm sincere. God must accept it, and that's not the basis for worship. There's no scripture. That's a postmodern idea that is nowhere in the scriptures. So, like I said, here's a very, very popular book about worship that can't tell you what worship is. Now, I understand you say, well, brother Matt, what if it's a book on baseball? I mean, do they put a definition and say baseball's a game you play and there's four bases and an outfield and an infield, you hit the ball? I understand that, but that some things you might go without saying, but I'm telling you, worship has to be defined because there's so many ideas out there, and these guys just don't do it. So let's continue on here. So in 303 pages, Coughlin never once defines what worship. He has a whole book on worship. Worship matters. Well, what is worship? He never says. I almost feel like Matt Walsh. He's got that documentary, I haven't seen it yet, about what is a woman, and he asks, and nobody can define it. I feel the same way about this. What is worship? They can't tell you. They don't want to define it. Let's move on. So now we're going to How to Worship a King. This one, 2015, it's Gateway's own publishing house. And like I said, this one's so easy to bash because it has literally every trick praise and worship promoters use. Um, there actually is a chapter in this book called What is Worship? But I want to look at this and show you a few things because I still have questions. First off, he starts with getting into the etymology again. Kind of dangerous. I got my laptop sitting on like a music stand here, so my mouse is over there anyway. See, I'm even sporadic and when I'm pre-recording this stuff. I'm not just in class. So, anyway, sorry, lost my train of thought. So, what is worship? Okay. Um, this gets into, I want to point this out. He gets into the English definition of worship. I talk about that in my book too. I think it's worthwhile to understand what it is in our language, but I'm also going to tell you, truthfully, the English definition does not matter. It matters in how we communicate, but what really matters is the biblical definition of worship. So he does have this out there. I applaud him. He actually digs a little bit deeper than Mr. Coughlin does. All right, so here we go. He goes in here. What is worship? And I'll jump back off there. So he says the cross, as we will soon learn, was the greatest act of worship in history. I still don't understand that one. And then he says, he answers his own question there. You ask, what is worship? Jesus defined it in the Garden of Gethsemane as he faced his impending death. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. That is worship. Yes, worship has an element of surrender, but once again, he's using an illustration. He's using something, like I say, it's not a definition. I would say maybe a description, but these are not telling us what is worship. He never defends, he never expounds on these things. We're 70 pages into the book at this point. He never talks about what is worship. So, he also likes to bash denominations, basically like, true worship was squashed. That's a made up a word. Squashed. Anyway, by denominations, and this straw man argument he uses is pathetic. And he uses this line here: worship is the opposite of religion. Not necessarily. That's on page 4 of the book, and he's basically saying order, boundaries, traditions, leadership, culture are the antithesis of true worship, and basically arguing for an unbridled worship experience. You can't put a limit on it, or you are quenching the spirit. That's not biblical at all. That's a very bad thing. So, straw man argument he makes. So, in 291 numbered pages, he never gives a true definition. And you say, well, he kind of did. Well, let me show you some examples from the conservative side, the more conservative side, and I think you'll see a night and day difference. So I'm going to appeal now to John MacArthur's book, Worship, the Ultimate Priority, 2012. And actually, it's a reprint with some editing from an earlier one, I think from the 80s. But anyway, this is the one you'll see in stores, and it's pretty easy to find. You know what we find here? Definitions. Oh, look, page 10. Worship is any essential expression of service rendered unto God by a soul who loves and extols him for who he is. That, my friends, is a definition. That is not a description. It is a definition. We finally have it. That's what this is. What is worship? An essential expression of service rendered unto God by a soul who loves and extols him for who he is. That's worship. That's Romans 12, 1 and 2. That's what I would argue. That's the ultimate act of worship. That's it. Wow, amazing. It's not impossible to write a book about worship with leaving out a definition. All right. He gives his fullest definition in chapter number 3. And he says, I'm sorry, no, we began chapter number 3. I'm sorry. So it's page 165. And he kind of builds this throughout there. He says, worship is honor and adoration directed to God. Throughout the study, the concept was expanded so that perhaps a fuller definition is appropriate. Worship is our innermost being responding with praise for all that God is through our attitudes, actions, thoughts, and words based on the truth of God as he has revealed himself. And he says another way to say it is that worship is glorifying God. Ding, ding, ding. We have it. Look, a definition. It works, and it's right. It's biblical. It's fantastic. You can evidently write a book with a definition in it. We'll go one more here. Um, Scott Aniol is one of my favorite, more modern authors on worship. He has gotten a little bit more reformed as he's gone along. He's gotten in with the G3 group, and I don't want to bash them. They're Calvinists. They're Reformed. But he is a Baptist and kind of came out of Bob Jones. And anyway, his stuff as he's gone on gets a little bit more reformed. But I think he is one of the better writers as long as you understand the direction he is coming from on that. So there's a kind of a limit to what we do or to what I agree with him on. But let's look over here in his book. This is from a book called Worship and Song: A Biblical Approach to Music and Worship. Pretty good book. What do we see here in chapter number 2? The question is asked in the chapter title: what is worship? And you know what he does? Let me get my mouse over here where I can see it. He gives definitions. Here's one by John Frame. Here's one by Warren Wiersbe. And by the way, most of these are in your class notes. I borrowed them and put them in here. So there we go again, page 23 to 24. There's the Frame, Wiersbe. Let's go over here. Joseph Carroll, not from here. Charles Ryrie, more famous for dispensational thought, Dallas Theological Seminary. A.W. Tozer. By the way, you have to watch A.W. Tozer. I know a lot of people like him, but he's part of the was it Christian and Missionary Alliance A.B. Simpson started, or at least kind of was the forerunner or the major leader before Tozer. They have some Pentecostal leanings. You need to be a little bit careful with Tozer. He's very popular, but there are some aspects on him where he leans Pentecostal, even in worship. So John MacArthur, we just read that one. Wayne Grudem, like I say, his systematic theology, it is kind of charismatic, but it's a decent definition there. And then this is Mr. Aniol's definition he comes up with, and I like it. Worship is a spiritual response to God as a result of understanding biblical truth about God. Wow, a definition. Amazing, right? So here's my first conclusion on this. Proponents of praise and worship willingly give vague definitions, if they give one at all, to terms like worship. And like I'm telling you, I can show you more examples of this from other books written by praise and worship guys. It just, they never want to nail down and put a definition to worship. Why is that? We can only speculate, but I think one is they want a very wide market for their books, to put it honestly. They want their books to be able to be picked up by a Baptist or a Pentecostal or whoever, so they stay vague so everybody reads it and you think, oh, I agree. And by the way, I'm going to tell you something. A lot of these books on worship, I will pick up and I'll start saying, that's pretty good. It's okay, but the deeper you go into it, this vagueness makes you think they're agreeing with you because you supply your own definitions to what's being written. But the deeper you get into it and the more things you know to watch for, the more you will realize that they're saying something completely different because they use these words like worship with very different definitions than what we would. So anyway, so a wide market. They also don't want to be judgmental, or this whole idea of judgmental. Okay, I'm sorry. The same verse that says, "Judge not, lest you be judged." Matthew chapter 6. You go down a few verses, and it says, "You will know their fruit. You will know them by their fruit." I'm badly misquoting of that. So the same chapter where they say, "Look, you can't judge," it literally says, like 10 verses later, "Yes, you are to judge." That's not what it's talking about. And by the way, I'm not being judgmental. I don't have. Look here. There we go. I don't have my Bible, but I do have a Bible. This Bible is judgmental. It's not denominational in the Baptist way or the Presbyterian way, but the Bible. I was going to say biblical. The Bible is judgmental, and it does define what true worship is. So I'm not being judgmental. God is. And I think that's one of the keys when we talk about judging. I think what we do is almost more discernment because we use these principles. But God, I'm not the one calling it right or wrong. God has set these principles, and we just use it for discernment. And also, like I say, with this, they want to promote experience over settled truth. Because if I were to tell you, well, worship is a response to God's revelation, that's a decent basic definition. If I were to say that, well, what does that look like? And how am I to say that, well, your response is not going to church and going fishing on Sunday morning because you're with God's creation? So, well, that's not true worship. You've abandoned you've forsaken the assembly. Or if I were to say, well, my way of worship is to, flop on the ground like a fish. And well, you can't be judgmental. You can't say that that's not it. I think I can actually, because it's contrary to biblical definitions and descriptions of worship. So this idea is like, well, just whatever, your truth, your experience, this very postmodern idea of that there's everything's relative plays into this, and so you don't want to bash anybody's experience, because if they feel like they worshiped, and not the scale we're supposed to use. So I think that's another reason that they don't like doing the definitions. Okay, let's jump over here now to our next one, word studies. Watching the clock here, because this lecture just goes on, and I'll just stop wherever I need to stop here. So, word studies. Proponents of praise and worship theology often use misleading or unscholarly word studies of Hebrew and Greek words. This is one of the classic hallmarks. And in the books, the history of this movement, you go read those. They'll talk about these early Pentecostal charismatic authors in like the 40s and 50s getting a Strong's Concordance and taking these definitions and not properly applying them, or reworking them, or taking the word can be used 50 times, but one case is kind of a little bit crazy. So, but then they redefine it by that. There's so much we can get into, and I'm going to show you some examples on this specifically. By the way, I do have an article on my website with a bunch of information, and I go way deep in this with a whole list of words. So the book that I'm going to be bashing here, and I'm just using it as just choosing to use it because it's popular. Because, like I say, you Google this, Hebrew word studies on praise and worship, you'll find all kinds of lists. This one has 7, and some of those are a little bit more unique that aren't as used as many times. But I think it's a good place because it is popular. It's still for sale, Christian bookstores and stuff. So I don't remember when that came out. I'll let that detail off. Let's see. When was that published? It wasn't too long ago. 2017. So yeah, it's very new. So all right, let's jump in here. The first word, and I'm just following right along with this book, is yada. And if you get my picture on there, you don't necessarily need to see that raised hand. So let me turn in here to this. So yada, used 114 times total in the Old Testament, 67 times in Psalms. Translating the King James is praise, give thanks, confess, thank, make confession, thanksgiving, cast out, thankful, shoot. It's usually to praise or give thanksgiving. Those are the main definitions here. Strong's definition says a primitive root used only as the denominative from yod, literally to use, to hold out the hand physically, to throw a stone or an arrow at or away, especially to revere and worship with extended hands, intensely to bemoan by wringing the hands. Okay, note here, everything's about the hands. Hebrew is a very physical language. It's not abstract at all. It's very concrete. So it uses very physical expressions here. So okay. I do think I did fail, and I think it may be in the notes when we get here. Let me look at this real quick. Strong's definition. Okay, I don't guess I really got into some of the praise and worship definitions in the notes or the slides. I may need to fix that. But Tomlin, Whitehead, in their book, they say to revere or worship with extended hands, to hold out the hands, to throw a stone or arrow. Okay, So you have to raise your hands. This is hand raising, right? Extending your hands. So let's talk a little bit about this. And take me off because I got a bunch of stuff here. All right, so the primary root here means to cast with the hand, and that can be shooting arrows, throwing a rock, even throwing somebody out, expelling someone, like I'll say a bouncer at a bar. That's not a great example. Security guard throwing out a protester at a Trump rally. Okay, that sounds better, right? Anyway, um, the problem is, like I said, that's your root basis. If I put my picture on here, will it work? Will it cover up anything? A little bit. I may jump off here in a second. The problem with this is again, so many of these words. That's the literal, concrete meaning of this word, but so many of the uses have nothing to do with the hands. It seems like on the surface. So confess, give praise, and raising hands. By the way, and I know I get into this deeper into the book, and I think we'll get into this a little bit later on here too. Raising hands, it can be identification, surrender. It can be pointing towards something, marking something. It can be lifting up to honor God. But the problem with this is are we literally having to cast out our hands? Well, that looks creepy on that webcam. Or is it about what we are throwing? Like I say, when these examples of throwing a rock, I don't put a rock in my hand and then throw it out there, but I don't let go of the rock. I think the idea here, better to be understood, is I'm casting something, I'm throwing something out. And so I think when we do this, it's not that I'm raising my hands in praise, it's the idea that I'm casting my praise. I'm casting my praise. We talk about, Revelation and casting our crowns before Christ, and I think that idea is better here, that we are throwing out our praise. I don't think it's necessarily you have to raise your hands, and we'll break into that a lot more later. So let me jump over here so I can see that. Is so an illustration of this, Psalm 33:2, and this one. Let me jump over there and read this one. It's not Chronicles, it's in Psalms. Nail-biting, riveting information here, right? So I'm trying to look up stuff. 33:2. Praise the Lord with harp, sing unto him with psaltery and an instrument of 10 strings. So praise the Lord with harp. So again, am I praising the Lord by lifting up a harp? Oh God, look, here's my harp. That's not what's being mean. Or is it that I am applying my hand to the harp? And I'm using my Bible as a harp. I do have a guitar over there. I don't ever play. I could get that, but it really needs. I am praising God, extending my hand to the harp. I think is a much better, or I'm casting what I do with the harp to God. I think those ideas are better than than what we have there with just talking about the idea of raising hands. Okay. All right, let's keep going here. Let's talk about this one, halal, and 165 times total. Oh, by the way, it's a verb. I didn't highlight this. This is kind of important. Yada is a verb. Halal is a verb. And by the way, Google these. I'm giving you the Strong's numbers. Go look at them. Go look them up in the different dictionaries. Brown Drivers Briggs. It's a little bit more in depth, but I'm seriously go look at these in Hebrew references, and or even like Vine's expository dictionary, things like that, and you're going to find how twisted these definitions are by the praise and worship crowd. So halal means praise, 117 times, glory, 14 times, boast, mad, that's a fun one, shine, foolish, fools, commend, rage, celebrate, give, marriage, renown. It's like I said, a bunch of very broad things. Strong says to be clear, originally of sound, but usually of color, to shine, hence to make a show, to boast, thus be clamorously foolish, to rave. Okay. I think he gets carried away in his definition there somewhat. So let me talk about this here. And whoa, there I go, hitting my thing again. And jump back on here. Let me jump back on here and let's go over to the next slide. So the Mr. Tomlin, he says to boast, to rave, to shine, to celebrate, to be clamorously foolish. So to be worship, I have to be foolish. I have to rave like a lunatic. That's basically what they're saying. Um, that's not what the meaning of this word is. Look at the uses. It's better about shining, focusing, revealing. It's used to describe light sources. In Job, it's reveals an action. Okay, here's where the raving comes in. When we're talking about like David acting like he's crazy, this is here's the thing. I look at somebody, I can't tell they're crazy. That craziness has to be revealed. And so that's where this is. I think that's the better understanding of this word. It's not a word that means you're crazy or to act crazy. It means I am revealing that craziness through my actions. Boastful claims from a prideful heart. Again, it's revealing what's inside. It's being revealed. It's shining out. It's emanating. Revealing outward and inward foolishness. Like I said, that's the true meaning of this word. I'm revealing the pride, the foolishness, the madness within me. That's what this is. There's no hint of raving or being clamorously foolish in the proper use. Basically, they're taking a handful of references, minor references, and redefining. Like, what was that I had there on the previous slide? You've got 117, 114, 130 references, roughly 131 references there, but they're taking this right here, these 8 ones where it talks about being mad, these 2 about being rage. So they're basically taking less than 10% of the uses and redefining the proper uses of this word. It's a very unsound method of biblical interpretation. You cannot do that, but they do. So, all right, let's move right on here. Let's talk about zamar. This is another verb. 45 times used in Scripture, 41 times in Psalms. It means to praise, sing psalms, sing forth. Okay. Strong says primitive root, perhaps okay, with zamar, through the idea of striking with the fingers, properly to touch the strings or parts of musical instruments, to play upon it, to make music, accompanied by the voice, hence to celebrate in song and music, give praise, sing forth praises and psalms. So with this definition, we are talking about not only singing, but also, I mean, it's really like music itself. The definition from Tomlin's book: to make music, to celebrate in song and music, to touch the strings or parts of a musical instrument. And I'll tell you, he goes so far into this. Basically, he basically uses this like he's creating an atmosphere. And here's a quote from his book. Music is more powerful than we even understand. It can soften our hearts, soothe our troubled souls. It opens a door to the spiritual world. It paves the road for the Spirit's coming. The patriarchs, psalmists, and prophets of the scriptures understood the power of music especially. And he goes in the story about Elisha. And I'm not denying the power of music, but that it paves the road for the Spirit's coming? No, that's a charismatic teaching. Let's move on here. So, by itself, zamar, it just simply means to play a musical instrument. It's a very basic, to make music. But it's like I said, it's more inclusive than just that, because it does include vocal music if you go study out the uses of it. It's also interesting in 39 of its 45 uses, zamar occurs in the same or adjacent verse with other praise or musical terms. So it's almost always not on itself linked to praise, but it links in its context to praise. That's very fascinating to me. So it's not just about playing music, but it's like or playing or making music, but it's also then applied to praise or worship in context. It's really fascinating like that. Most of these, like I say, instrumental vocal terms, I think it's probably the combination of the two, although it probably could be used either or. I think it's the combination of it. And I think this is a very generic word, just to be honest with you, because of the uses, because of the contextual clues. And most people, like I said, they just, well, it's instrumental. Look, we can have instrumental music. Yeah, we can have instrumental. David played harp. Okay, yeah, I get it. But it links to singing in its context so many times um, that I think that is a far better understanding. All right, word number 4, toda. And now I want you to notice here, this is very important, and this shows you how bad these studies are. You know, right here, if you can see my mouse on the screen, I think there's a way I probably could. Actually, you know what? Can I do that over here? Let me try this. I've never tried this. If I do this right here. Oh, yeah. Oh, looky there. It does work. Oh, I've never done that before. So learn something cool every day. It's a noun. This word is noun. The first 3 we have looked at have been verbs. This is a noun. Why is that important? Because look down there at that Strong's definition. From yada. From yada. Oh, I'm going to have so much fun with this now. So we had, let's review real quick. Let's go back. The first word we had was yada, which is a verb meaning to cast with the hand and to throw out praise. So then when we get here, this is the noun form of the verb. It's not a separate word. I mean, that's just basic linguistics. I can say I went for a run, or I can say I ran this morning. I didn't literally do either of those things, but run and ran. I mean, you understand. I'm talking about either I am doing it or that action as a noun, that act of it. It's not a separate word. But here's the problem: Strong's usually does not differentiate between nouns and verbs. I'll be honest with you. I personally find Brown Drivers Briggs. It's way more technical. I don't always agree with them, but it is very good about pointing out noun versus verb, and then not only that, but the way the verb is used in its different forms. So, and sometimes that makes a big difference on these words, the different Hebrew. When you're conjugating verbs and things like that, there's tenses and things. It makes a huge difference in how these words are to be understood. So this word, we shouldn't even, in my opinion, we shouldn't even be having this word on the list because it's not a different word in its, I think, in its most basic context. But when you get in here, chapter number 4 of Tomlin's book, an extension of the hand, thanksgiving, a confession, a sacrifice of praise, thanksgiving for things not yet received, a choir of worshipers. This word means to throw out a hand. I mean, all these different things. I'm like I say, you can see he's borrowing some of this from the Strongs, but I'm telling you, that's there. Even you start getting in some of the song. I've always heard that Strong's definitions are very subjective. They're almost too basic. And this is a case where they really, really do pour that out. It Anyway, moving on from this one because I don't think there's too much to say on this word. It's very badly misused. Let's go over to Barak. This is a verb, and 330 times total in the Bible, 75 in Psalms. It means to bless, salute, curse, blaspheme, blessing, praise, kneel down, congratulate, kneel, make to kneel, and some miscellaneous uses, just kind of various. I kind of lumped in there so I didn't have to do them all. Strong says a primitive root to kneel, by implication to bless God as an act of adoration, or vice versa. Man as a benefit, also by euphemism to curse God or king as treason. And he's got abundantly congratulated, some different things. The main thing about the word Barak is, like I say, what is its concrete idea? And the concrete idea of this word is, I keep doing that, is that it means to kneel. And it can be used to pay homage or reverence to a king. We see that numerous times. It can be used as a salutation, greeting someone. It also can be pronouncing a blessing on someone, um, or to be specially granted goodness or favor. So, all these ideas, it's about passing on honor and goodwill through the physical act picture of bowing. It also can mean to denounce or wish evil upon, which is kind of in a mocking sense. So that's kind of a context thing on that. So when applied to worship of God, we see the ideas of humility. Uh, Here, kneeling down, I'm really big on that. I think that's super important. Acknowledgement, honor, reverence. I like this word. There's a lot to learn from this word. The primary targets of our blessing are either God Himself or His name. This is a heartfelt reaction to God's glory and His works. Like I said, this really is a great word when you keep it in context. But they don't do that. So on this word, literally, Mr. Whitehead makes stuff up. The definition they use is to kneel, to bless God as an act of adoration, to praise, to salute, to thank. All those are fine. The problem is they literally make stuff up. He claims the word is used 289 times in Psalms. It's only used 75 times. I can't find those other 214 times. I don't know where he gets that from. No reference I've looked at has that number. He also claims this really bizarre thing here in that second paragraph, the scan I have. It says, scholars of ancient Hebrew provide additional insights into the word barak. They believe that in the original context, the term did not simply mean bowing down. Instead, it carried the connotation of bending low while keeping one's eyes fixed on the king. To barak is to be transfixed. I have consulted every dictionary I can get my hand on, online, scans, the physical books I have, every book I have reference to that is an actual Hebrew study, not just taking something like this word for it. I have yet to find a single scholar, singular, of ancient Hebrew that gives this idea. I literally, this guy's making stuff up. I have never found any of this information that he has. But you throw it out there and people believe it, which is, by the way, why I'm big. Put footnotes, okay? Footnote your information. Tell what, before I move on, real quick, I just realized I've got one more book I want to show you. And give me just 1 second here to grab it. Goodness, when we're dealing with this, I think this is important. And this, I have to go back over to my worship shelf and get this one. So let's jump over here and put the big camera up. Okay, so this book, Worship and the Ear of God, written by a guy named Dave Hardy out of Heartland Baptist College. I heard about this book and I thought, wow, a fundamentalist, a conservative, a good Bible college. He's got a good book on worship. I got this book. Extremely disappointed in this book. And I actually have a book review of it up on my website, and I go through this. But basically, he fails to differentiate between the physical act of bowing and the kind of the more abstract understanding of worship that is applied through this word. He goes so far as to say that you ought to literally bow down, which I'm not opposed to. I'll be honest, I'm not opposed to. I in prayer very often lay flat on my face before God. That's not an issue to me. The issue is that he takes this so far. He actually had in his church a time where they would bow down in worship ahead of time. Or like anybody that wants to, they can. You don't have to. Like I say, this is like Pentecostal charismatic physical expression of worship stuff. And this guy is educated. He's very disappointed. I mean, on something so basic that he gets this wrong. And like I say, some of this is I don't get in here and just completely bash this thing, but yeah, we'll move on from this. It's just like I said, I just want to point that out because this book, written by a fundamental author, promoted in a Bible college not far away, in a Bible college I know people at. I think it's sound, as far as I know, and he completely blows his understanding of worship because of this word. So, all right, let's move on now. All right, Tehillah or Tehillah. I like to say Tehillah, but that's probably bad of me to say it that way. Um, this is our sixth word. Let me jump over here. So, it's used 57 times total, 30 times in Psalms, and sorry, getting it up over here. This is from Halal. By the way, let's note here again. We're going to use the little pen. This is a noun. Let's jump back. It's from halal. This is derived from the word halal. Oh wait, do you remember the word halal? Let's see here. Oh look, we just covered that. And this one is a verb. But now we are dealing with a noun of the same word. Sorry. Wrong one. There we go. That's important. So he says here laudation, specifically, concretely, a hymn, praise. Like I said, basically noun form of halal, its inclusion again, I think this is misleading. It's not a totally separate word. It's connected or derived from a word that's previously used. By the way, their book, they describe it as laudation, a hymn, a song of praise, a new song, a spontaneous song. Okay, so they wrongly identify this as a new word. They then say, well, it's spontaneous. You're just making it up, which is included as kind of a gift of prophecy, a renewal in that. Sometimes some people say it's a scripture song. All these things, like I say, why is this so different as a noun from the verb form? It's absolutely unnecessary. I think it reinforces how weak the claims are here. Oh, by the way, guess where this verb is found? It's in Psalm 22:3, the litmus test here. And oh, by the way, I told you about this, before. Psalm 22:3. This is your litmus test for if it's praise and worship, charismatic theology. He says here, the notion of Psalm 22:3 is beautiful. When we offer new songs of praise, our spontaneous tehillah, the Lord steps from his heavenly courts and takes residence among the congregation. God inhabits their tehillah, is enthroned on it. So again, I praise God. God shows up like a moth to a flame, and then we worship him. Praise and worship theology right there, spelled out. The other thing, and time's getting away from me here, I want to point out very quickly here is that idea of the new song that we saw on the previous slide. Well, no, I'm sorry, you got to go back one more. This idea that it is a new song. Sorry, I guess I just read that. Sorry, I forget where I'm at. I'm running out of time and I'm losing myself. But right here, new songs of praise. The idea here is that this is spontaneous, like I said, a gift of prophecy. Biblically, go just search for the phrase new song, and you will find that it is always attached to deliverance. When you sing a new song, it's a new response of praise to God, thanking Him for deliverance. It's only used, I think, 7 or 8 times, if I remember right, but it has nothing to do with spontaneity. It just has to do with a new outpouring of praise in response to something God has done. Okay, the last word here, Shabbat. And we'll have to end our session here, which leaves us a whole lot of ground to cover in the next one. Okay, this one is only used 11 times, 7 in Psalms. So it's a very rare word. This one, a lot of these lists is left off of, but it is included here in Tomlin's book, Tomlin and Whitehead's book. So I'm trying to get over here to get their definition. And this is where they actually get their idea of the holy roar that the book is named after. Strong says this means to properly address in a loud tone, specifically loud, figuratively to pacify, as if by words, command, glory, keep, praise, still. Okay, to steal, to triumph. Okay, these definitions are all over the place. Shabbat in the Tomlin's book, to address in a loud tone, to shout, to commend, glory, and triumph. And they make the case this means to create a holy roar. Aramaic form of this word is actually used. It's another Strong's number. It's used 5 times. It's translated praise. But okay, because it's so rarely used, it doesn't make it on a lot of lists. And most praise and worship teachers highlight the volume, the loudness part of this. But here's the thing. Every other dictionary, every other language resource I have used fails to highlight or mention anything about volume. So Strong's is the only one. Brown Driver's big, just send us any other resource that I have looked at. There's nothing about volume in this. So I want to point that out. Consensus on the root definition is that it means to soothe or stroke. Safer application to praise would be praising in or through peace, complete opposite of the praise and worship materials. The loudness, all these different crazy things, means a holy roar and all this stuff, just completely making stuff up. Since there's 11, we're going to speed through these very quickly. There's only 11 appearances of this verse. And I think it's important. If we're going to throw these claims out, let's look at them. So 3 verses quoted, and these are hard to define by Psalm 63:3. Because thy loving kindness is better than life, my lips shall praise Shabbat thee. By the way, the book puts that in verse 4, not verse 3. They even get the verse wrong. Psalm 117:1. Oh, praise the Lord, all ye nations. Praise Shabbat him, all you my people. All you people. Psalm 145, verse 4. One generation shall praise Shabbat thy works to another, and shall declare thy mighty acts. So they're not really much definition of those. These verses are not clear. First Chronicles 16:35. And say ye, save us, O God, our salvation, and gather us together. Deliver us from the heathen, that we may give thanks to thy holy name and glory, Shabbat, in thy name. Psalm 106:47. Save us, O Lord our God, and gather us from among the heathen, to give thanks unto thy holy name, to triumph, Shabbat, in thy praise. Psalm 147, verse 12. Praise Shabbat the Lord, O Jerusalem. Praise thy God, O Zion. Then we go on. These uses cannot mean holy roar. Psalm 65:7, which stealeth the noise of the oceans, the noise of the waves, the tumult. Now, somebody did bring up to me, and I'm going to say it may be a case here that counters what I'm saying, that perhaps this is like shouting down, like if you get louder than something, you kind of still it or quiet it, put it in its place. I don't know, but I had that pointed out. No, there may be a case for that in that verse. Psalm 89:9, thou rulest the raging of the sea, when the waves thereof arise, thou stillest them, Shabbat. Psalm 29:11, a fool uttereth all his mind, but a wise man keepeth Shabbat it in till afterwards. So a holy roar is keeping something inside? That doesn't make sense. Ecclesiastes 4:2. Wherefore I praise Shabbat the dead, which are already dead, more than the living, which are yet alive. Ecclesiastes 8:15. Then I commended Shabbat mirth, because a man hath no better thing under the sun than to eat and to drink and to be merry, for that shall abide with him of the labor in the days of his life, which God giveth him under the sun. Okay, especially those last two. There's nothing in that can mean holy roar. And it's described here as a powerful effect in the book of raising a holy roar. But calming, stilling, keeping, holding, praising the dead, commending mirth, half the references have nothing to do. You cannot claim this word has a powerful effect or a holy roar when half the occasions it doesn't use that. Again, praising in or through peace, I think, is a little bit better definition. One more here. We'll get into the Greek, proskuneo, and this is highlighted in How to Worship a King. The word is used as worship about 60 times in the New Testament. It means to kiss like a dog licking a master's hand, to fawn, to crouch. These are very bad definitions. The primary meaning of the word is to prostrate yourself, to bow down. So it's a probable derivative. I'm sorry, my mouse isn't working here. Probable derivative. It doesn't say it is, but the meaning of the word itself means to bow down. It can also mean to kiss the hand, such as done sometimes to royalty. That's the illustration of the picture I have there. Nice redefines this word to mean to adore or to blow kisses, because he gets his hand extension thing in there. Blowing kisses is far too colloquial for a word to do obeisance to a king. So the idea of kissing here, even though it's minor, it's not any sort of intimate or romantic type thing. We're going to deal with that subject in the next lecture. It's just not there. Like I say, think of bowing before a king, kissing the ring, kissing the hand. Those are the ideas of this word. Don't let them read into that. So conclusion number 2. Proponents of praise and worship rely on poorly constructive and frankly deceptive word studies. And again, these things, you're not getting these. Strong's is okay. Strong's is not the most thorough source that there is. It's good for a quick definition, but if you dig deeper, it's inadequate. So, like I say, I've consulted as best I can within my own understanding of some of these, which is pretty finite. But I don't see people studying Hebrew and becoming charismatics because of what they learn about these vocabularies. In fact, these resources are coming from people who do not know what they're talking about. And I know enough, very little, to know I don't know necessarily what I'm talking about, and I sure know they don't know what they're talking about. So, like I say, if we have people going to seminary, learning Hebrew, and then suddenly becoming charismatic, I would feel more comfortable with some of these word studies. But that does not happen. All the resources, all the studies that I find, no one becomes charismatic because of Hebrew word studies. They basically have already taken a position, and then they are building a foundation to match it after they've already created their position. It's backwards logic. So can't accept these. Cannot accept these word studies at all. So, all right. And like I say, I like word studies. Read my book. I have word studies in there. We talk about some of these words and break them down and some of the meaning. I'm all for these things, but you have to stay true. You have to be right. You have to use good resources. You have to be consistent. And these do not do that. They literally make stuff up. So, all right. Well, that's going to be it for this lecture. We will come back and do finish up the rest of this, about 75 slides. I hope I pull that off. And the next lecture, that's going to have to move very fast. So thank you for watching, and we'll get to the next lecture soon.